welcome to the Next Canon podcast. My name is Danny Ray. You know that. Today, our guest is extra special, super fun. Today, we have Micaela Gonzales. Say hi, Micaela.
Hello there.
Micaela is a dancer, so today's episode is really exciting for me. We're going to get a little bit of a more different perspective from a performing arts creator and person. As you may have remembered, Micaela is also a part of the Dirty Darlings, like Leilani from season 1. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Micaela.
Yeah, so a little bit about my background. I'm originally from Texas, born and raised there. And then I came over to Seattle for college, and I graduated from Cornish in 2018. And I have been, dancing and existing in the Seattle dance scene and burlesque scene for a few years now. And yeah, I'm a part of a few different burlesque troupes, and I'm a part of a modern dance company, and I'm just trying to stay alive,
You're killing the game. I've seen you do so many like Zoom stuff on your burlesque account, like that looks so fun.
Yeah, I mean, online is the way, right? There's no other way.
You did it like right off the bat too. I think you were the first person I saw that was like burlesque show online on Zoom right now.
Yeah, we were like trying to figure it out. We did it on Facebook at first, but I mean, I'm sure as we all know, Facebook is kind of really harsh about what can and cannot be seen online. So we got taken down like immediately, and we were like, all right, we got to figure something else out. So YouTube, and then YouTube started taking us down. And so, it's just been crazy.
Yeah. How has, what happened right after the pandemic for you? Like right after everything started?
I mean, I'm sure just like for a lot of other people, it was 0 to 100. Also, this is my cat. Sorry about that. My boo. And her sister Jinx.
Incredible.
But I mean, it went from 0 to 100 real quick. So I had my whole 2020 year planned out for performances in both modern dance and burlesque. And all of them were paying. All of them were actually really like good paying jobs. And some of them were going to be in theater spaces that were bigger than what I was used to. So like up to 500 people could have like watched our show. Like it was just really exciting in terms of like my career, and it all got taken away from me within the span of 24 hours, which I know other people, are just like, yeah, me too. And so it was just a lot of trying to figure out like, well, then what are we doing? Like, what's next? And like, how are we going to make this work? I think, going into it, we all thought like, this is only going to last a few months. And then it was like, no, this is a long-term thing. We have to actually figure out how to be artists in a completely digital world. And it was just sort of jarring at first, but also as artists, we're resilient and we have to figure it out because, we are nothing without our art and without our art form. And so it was a lot of, online meetings with people and being like, well, what do we do next? And how can we do this safely? And what's the best platform to use? Because, if you're taking your clothes off, a lot of platforms are going to be like, you, like, get off and like, don't bother us again. And so it was just so much.
Yeah. That's a lot. And like, that's already like a art form where you have to think about logistics, like crazy burlesque.
Yeah.
I mean, because
totally.
like, even like in-person venues, there's really strict rules that like you're really supposed to adhere to.
Completely. But also in the other regard, so I should be a spokeswoman for like Crowdcast, because I have told everyone about this platform and been like, you should use it and you need to buy it right now. Because when I tell you this platform does not care, it does not care. Like the thing about performing live in burlesque is like, you have to adhere to health code, which means no nipples, no genitalia, all of that stuff. And if you show it, you get fined, and you get fined like thousands of dollars. It's ridiculous. And then Crowdcast is an online platform, and like we went through all of their rules. We even like took a little like webinar that was like explaining like what Crowdcast was, and basically they were like, yeah, we just don't care about nudity. So here we also have this whole thing where people are like, wait, I can show my nipples? And I was like, show your nipples, nobody cares anymore. Like the world is ending, show your fucking nipples, please. So it's like, yeah, we're online, but also I'm like, free the nipple, like we're just trying to live.
I love that. Nobody cares anymore.
Nobody cares. Like the world is ending, let them see nipple. Like, I'm just like, who fucking cares?
That's amazing. Oh my God, I love that. And I love the like switch that's been like, obviously it's been hard and challenging and like still isolating because you're still alone in your home, but like you've been making it work.
Totally.
And like I am so happy that everything was going so like spectacularly because you are an amazing artist. And so I was like hearing that from you today. So it's like, and it'll be back. Like I promise you'll still have those like amazing well-paying jobs, like because you're not getting less fantastic, you're getting more well-versed in other things.
Thank you. I think it's just this thing of like I guess in your 20s, I mean, you just feel like everything's moving way too fast, and I always constantly am like, this is the youngest I'm ever gonna be, and like probably the hottest, and like I need to be like doing things right now, like somebody get me out of this pandemic. And my mom's always like, no, just chill, like it's gonna get so much better than this. But you know, it's just so annoying to be like, I didn't mess up because of a personal thing. Like I wasn't a bad person, I wasn't irresponsible, I wasn't, you know, I didn't get blacklisted because of whatever. Like I just literally was a victim of a pandemic. And that's like what's so frustrating is like I was doing all of the things. Like I was being responsible. I was, you know, setting boundaries and making sure I got paid what I deserve. And then all of a sudden it was like, just kidding. And I'm like, I didn't do anything though. But you know, like I said, I know that I'm not alone. I know that we're all in this like same giant boat together. And it's just like, when the world is normal, then we'll just kind of have to be like, and go, and like, let's start over, and we'll have to see what theaters are left as well. So it's just like, all right, let's do this.
Right. I was working at a escape room, which I absolutely adored because I was like acting and then like helping people like get puzzles and stuff, which was so fun. And that was like, boom, gone. And so they've pivoted online a little bit, but I'm just like, I worry about that industry because it's so fun and like not very many people like know about it. But
well, and like, also it's like the whole point is that you're in a room with people and you're like, I can't be in a room with people. Like, right. It's so like, how are we supposed to make this work?
Right. At the very beginning, we were like cleaning everything between every game. And I was really lucky because my last game was like this game of 4 like enthusiasts. Like they were really good, they were really nice, and they like won the game with like a lot of time to spare. And it's a really hard room. It's one of the top 10 rooms in the country. It's amazing. But like they were amazing, and I got to chat with them, and it was like my really very last game without knowing it. And I'm like, honestly, thanks universe for that amazing game, because
I needed that goodbye.
I did. I also like I've heard what your mom said too, like it gets better, like in a different way than the normal, like it gets better. Like people say like your 30s is really where it's at, but then some people are like, no, your 30s suck. And I'm like, everyone, come on.
So my dad says that his 50s were his favorite part of his life, and my mom says like the 30s were the best. And I think it's like, maybe it's just like a her thing, like her as a mom, like she'd already had a kid, but her, you know, my sister was older, and then she was like, I just got to be me for a second, and I was just like, that sounds nice, like
30, flirty, and thriving, you know?
Yeah, so I'm excited for that, but we'll see if it happens, you know.
Wait, like weirdly we have to wait, even though it feels like everything is going 10 billion miles an hour.
Well, yeah, like don't your 30s just like pass you in like the blink of an eye? I don't know, but I always
don't know.
Quote,
I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, seriously. I always quote Trixie Mattel because she goes, I went from being an old 20 to a young 30. I'm a 30-year-old baby. And I'm like, I'm going to be a 30-year-old baby. Like, that's the way I should think about it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love Trixie Mattel. That's
a whole other them. I literally have their book right here. Like, I love them. Yeah. We could talk about that in a different
That's
podcast.
Literally a whole other podcast, just how much we love Trixie Mattel. And the Bald and the Beautiful podcast. Have you been listening to that?
Oh, so good.
It comes out Tuesdays, just like my podcast, and I love everything about it.
So people can listen to them, you know, one after the other.
Exactly. Just like I do. Okay, to sort of pivot into our actual world that we're talking about today. What is a canon to you as a dancer?
Yeah, so a canon is not something in my dance world. I will say that I was in a mostly ballet dance world for a very long time. I was like, you know, bunhead, prima ballerina wannabe for years and years and years. And canon was not a word that I was really familiar with going into this. And I'm sure every dancer and their experience is different. If someone has a really, large background in musical theater, they probably understand it more than me. But canon isn't a word that I was super familiar with and that was used often. And I think that's because in the dance world, we more so focus on artists as a whole than the shows themselves. Like we talk about like, oh, we're going to use a show with Tchaikovsky's music, or oh, we're going to do a Balanchine piece, and we're going to do a Jerome Robbins festival. Like these were people that we knew very well and did their works consistently. But it wasn't something that was described as a canon, and that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
It's like these go-to shows basically that people use. And so I had to do a little bit of research, but because it wasn't something I was super familiar with. But going into it, I was like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. Like it's just shows that are consistently used by people. And I guess they're considered classics, and that's like sort of the word that we would use, is like it's a classic. Like everybody knows Balanchine and everybody knows Tchaikovsky, and like everyone knows Pina Bausch. So it's just like that. I was just like, oh, it's just a different word. Canon and classics, to me, are synonyms. So
no, definitely. When I sort of thought about how it would translate into dance, I thought about things like the Nutcracker Ballet, or like things that are like consistently done every year that you like would know about. That's
and that's what it is. It's just I've never used that word for. I just don't think in the ballet world that's like a go-to word. It might be a theater word that I was just like, oh wow.
It's not really something we talk about very much, as like someone who did theater in high school at like a public school and then like went to college. I learned about it from Hayden, who was on this podcast. They told me about it in like freshman year, and I was like, what is that?
Well, and what's crazy is like I went to a performing arts high school, so and the musical theater majors and the dance majors were around each other all the time. It was just something, we shared a lot of spaces, we shared the theater space, but it wasn't a word that I'd ever heard. And it's weird that, we both went into Cornish, like sort of not knowing this word and being like, what the heck? Like, this is a word that we should have been taught. And like what the idea of it should have been taught to us and all of that stuff. But yeah.
It's funny because it kind of like they taught everything but the word. Like you think about like we learned about American theater classics just like you guys did. We did like some Lorraine Hansberry. We did like Death of a Salesman. Like we learned about these classic shows that you hear about all the time. And that makes them a part of the American theater or the international theater canon. So that's why I sort of like my brain started doing this, what we're doing right now. And I'm like, well, let's make a new one because some of these shows really suck.
Completely.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, your comment of like, they suck. They do. But like people keep wanting to produce them because they just have that classic feel about them. Like they're like, oh, it's nostalgic. I'm like, no offense, but I don't think racism is nostalgic at all. Like I don't understand like why you feel like this is nostalgic. Like let's analyze it, like let's talk about it, but like why produce it in the way that it was presented at that time,
right? And in that spirit, do you have a show that's like gotta go?
Okay, all right, let's get into it. Because as a dancer, I want to acknowledge that there are so many classic pieces and they changed the dance world. Like they were artists who brought forth this piece of work and it completely changed the way that people thought about dance. And one of them being Balanchine. But Balanchine was an abuser, like severe abuser. He idolized women in a way that was like fetish like. He said that ballet was women. He was like, women are ballet. And it was because we were this, to him, this gentle creature that could be easily hurt. And he wanted to like idolize just like the female fragility. But behind the scenes, he was like starving his partners and, making them anorexic and all of this stuff because all of his dancers were a size 00 or smaller. He did not, acknowledge different body types. But we use his works all the time. And it's just like, you get tired of it. And, you know, to call out Pacific Northwest Ballet, I love the you know, all of the company members. I think they're beautiful. But they have a Jerome Robbins festival every year. And Jerome Robbins changed the dance world. You know, West Side Story changed the dance world. It changed TV. It changed movies and the way that they were produced. But he was known as and a very abusive person on set for West Side Story and other things. People lived in fear of him. He would, you know, throw things at them. He would fire them on the spot and then, you know, get them replaced within seconds. He would keep people past their contracted time. He was super abusive to technical, like to the tech team, and the set designers and all of them. He was awful. But West Side Story is a canon. It's something, you know, it's part of that canon. It's part of that show that we produce consistently. And they have this Jerome Robbins festival every year. And they're adhering to a very specific audience. And it's their white, rich audience of Seattle, because those people are like, I love, you know, Jerome Robbins. It just makes me think about when I was a teenager. And I'm like, no offense, but you're irrelevant now. Like, get your 85-year-old ass out of the way and let people like grow and change, and like let Pacific Northwest Ballet do different things, because they have tried. You know, I've talked to a lot of the company members about this, and they're like, oh, we try to do different things. And then our donors pull out because they don't want to be a part of that. They want
like
the
growth
classics.
And change and like becoming more inclusive. You don't want to be a part of that?
Yeah, and then they're like offended by it. And I'm just like,
well, I'm offended by you, so.
Exactly. It's just, but it's, you know, then we get into the whole, like, arts are so underfunded. And it's like, when you lose those people, then, you know, the Pacific Northwest Ballet is one of the only companies in the entire world that's part of a union.
Right.
And if they lose those donors, they cannot be a part of that any longer. They cannot give their company members insurance. You know, they can no longer be given breaks, like just literal 10-minute snack breaks. You know what I mean? So it's just like, it's this awful cycle of these racist, misogynistic, sexist people who have money know exactly what they're doing. And they're dangling this money in front of the faces of artists and being like, you have to do what I want because I'm paying you. And you're like, well, fuck. Now I have to do what you want, or else that means I can no longer make anything anymore. I can no longer pay my team. I can no longer produce anything. It's done.
Yeah.
So, you know, in the dance world, we're taught these classics, but we're doing them because we know what will bring the rich white people.
Right.
And you're
pandering to the audience.
Completely. And it breaks my heart. I mean, I taught itty bitties for years, and it's just sort of like, I want them to love Nutcracker and I want them to love Balanchine work, but I also want to be able to talk to them and be like, but this is not okay. If anyone ever makes you feel like this is not okay. But it's just not something that you can talk to so openly about, because people just, they don't want to hear the bad parts of people who changed history.
Right.
You know, they don't want to hear that these people were abusive, that these people were toxic. They don't want to hear that, because then they're like, well, you're getting rid of all of their great work that they did. No, we're not getting rid of it. It's still going to be there, but we need to talk about how it could be better.
Right.
Yeah, so it's just this constant cycle that no artist has yet been able to stop. But I feel like we're getting there, you know? Yeah. I feel like we're trying really hard. Our generation has truly changed the world, and, you know, I hope it keeps going. Like, yeah. I can only have hope.
Right. Fully. Like, I think, I don't know what it was. Maybe we became aware. I think our parents' generation was very big into the like, don't do anything you don't want to do, like, sort of thing. And their parents were like, do what I tell you to do, or you're getting hit with the switch out in the back of the wherever you are.
Yeah, totally.
But ours were like, don't let anyone talk down to you, like, don't let anyone. And now we're here like, not letting anyone talk down to me.
We're like throwing shit off of tables, like, how dare you?
Exactly.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think the one thing that I will always say about my upbringing was my mom treated dance and arts in general like that, like an art. She, you know, I was never allowed to do competitions. I was never allowed to like outwardly critique people if they hadn't asked for it. Like I wasn't allowed to be like, hey, that looked really bad. She would like, keep your mouth shut unless they ask you. And I have to say, like, that changed the way I looked at dance, and it changed the way I treated my body and myself as my career grew, because I want to be able to do this for as long as possible. I want to be able to create, produce, perform for years and years and years. And I don't want to tell a small child, because I was told this, like, you're too fat to dance, or you're too short to dance, or you're too of color to dance. Like, you are not going to be, you know, successful because of those things. And my mom was like, no, it's art. Anyone's allowed to do art. Just do it because you love it.
Right.
So I think like I was really lucky in that regard to have her being just like, you will not treat this like a competition, because it's not. Somebody's going to be more flexible than you. That's okay. Keep doing it. Keep doing what you want. And I was just like, all right.
Small me was awesome, like, whatever. Moms coming through on this podcast. Everyone's mom was really supportive. Maybe not everyone, but like a few people have talked about how wonderful their moms were for them.
I feel like that's what, I don't know, supportive parents, man, they just really change you.
They really do. Thanks, mom and dad. Thanks, parental units.
Thanks.
Around the world. Yeah, that's amazing. So thinking about wanting to create that change, like, do you have a show or a creator choreographer who you want to bring into the canon?
I mean, I think when I look at musical theater canons specifically, I just want new stuff, because I feel like whenever we go and, you know, visit Broadway in any city, you know, wherever there are theaters and shows being done, it's the same stuff over and over again. And like Wicked is wonderful, but can we like stop showing Wicked? And like, it's great. I know, I've seen it 3 times now, and like I want something new. And like I think when I am looking for a new show that I think would just really change the world, it's, you know, Lizzo creating the music for it. You know what I mean? Like, it's Cardi B hiring choreographers and being a part of it, because amazing. It's shows like Sex Education, Pose, like it's storylines like the Stonewall riots. Like those are the shows that I want to be on a theater. I want to see them on a stage, and I want to see the diversity, and I want to hear them talk about sex, and I want to hear them talk about like, I want to hear them talk about race in a real way, in a real conversation, and not a way that's like, and then this white person came and saved them. And I'm just like, okay, we're done with that narrative. Like, get it out. I want to see Hispanic representation and Latinx representation. You know, I looked it up because I think the argument that gets thrown in your face a lot when you bring this up is like, but it's not relatable because most people are this. In 2020, 52% of the population growth was Latinx. So that's a lie. It's like, it's a lie. What you're throwing in my face is a complete lie, because you surround yourself with white people, but around you are tons of different people from all over the world, all these different backgrounds, all these different ethnicities, and, you know, diverse cultures, and you're just ignoring them for convenience. So I think for me, it's, I don't have a specific story, but I know what I want to see, and like I know what I hope to hear, and, you know, what I hope the casts look like. It's just, you know, we need trans representation, non-binary representation. We need people who are on the autism spectrum to play people who are on the autism spectrum. Like, it's just as straightforward as that. And I don't know why it's so controversial, because to me, it's just pure sense, you know? So I don't know. It's just, I know what I'm looking for in terms of what a show should be to represent what our country, what the world looks like now. But does it have a specific name? No, because I think it could be so many different things. And I think it should be so many different things. Like, I think the great thing about Hamilton was that it was all people of color playing these these people who had changed the history of America, who were white. It was blind casted, basically. It had rap music, which was unheard of. It was great, but it's just the beginning.
Right.
And I think people need to treat it like that. Like, this was great, but it needs to get better. This needs to just be the start.
Right.
And so I'm just excited for what that looks like, you know?
Yeah. The line, you want a revolution, I want a revelation, just popped into my head when you said that. And it's kind of like, that was the revelation, like, oh, we can have casts that are like mostly vastly people of color and like love it and support it, and everyone wants to see it, and it's the It show. Interesting.
Yeah. And I think I always say we should analyze it, take it apart, and then appreciate it.
Yeah.
Because Hamilton was great, but there were still things that were wrong with it. And did it change the way that, you know, musical theater was being taken seriously? You know, like the way that rap music was being taken seriously? Absolutely it did.
Right.
But that is just the start. There were still things wrong with it. Figure out what those things were wrong, do better, and then keep doing better. Like, we as humans we're never satisfied, but for some reason we've grown really, really complacent with the way that we represent brown, queer, non-binary, trans, you know, etc. bodies in the arts world. We've just grown complacent. We're like, they're just not a part of it. And I'm just like, why is that normal? I don't understand.
Yeah. I feel like people don't like learning in the way that like children love to be like, oh, what's this? What's that? A blade of grass. Like, they'll like analyze pretty much anything. And they're so welcoming if their environment is right. You know what I mean?
Totally.
So I think as adults, people really forget to be like, oh yeah, I can learn something new today. Oh, yeah. This person changed their name? Fantastic. You know? Oh, they, them pronouns? Oh, I already do that if someone left their umbrella over there?
Totally. Yeah. Like, well, I think we're just afraid. People are so afraid of it affecting them in a direct manner. Like, they're so afraid of being like, if that person is trans, what does that mean for me as a non-trans person? And I'm like, it doesn't mean anything. Like, I just want to be like, it literally doesn't affect you because that person just gets to be trans and you still get to be cis. Like, I just like, I want to be like, it actually doesn't affect you in any real way. But
it's so true.
For them it does. And I'm still trying to understand like the psychological part behind that, because I was always taught just live and let live. Like, let that person be. If it doesn't affect you directly, like, whatever, move on. When it does affect you directly, approach it in a calm and collected manner and respectfully. Like, you know, if a close person to you is all of a sudden trans and you're like, I don't understand, ask them respectful questions. Like, be like, hey, I really need to understand this and I don't know where else to go. And then if that person says, I'm sorry, I can't help you, do research. Yeah. Like, you know, it's just, we have literal computers, hello, like full on the whole knowledge of the world in like our hands. Yeah. So it's just like, why aren't you doing this research? I don't know.
No, fully, entirely. Like, that's how I always thought about it too, is like, why do you care so much? Like, to people who are like, literally there was a thing called gay panic and it still exists.
Gay panic. Yeah. Like, and yeah, it's crazy. I mean, and we as humans have totally destroyed gay, trans, queer communities, you know, BIPOC, POC communities, just because we thought, oh, it's not affecting white people, then it's not relevant.
Or the white people are like, this threatens me.
Yeah, but it's also, I mean, like the AIDS pandemic, millions of people died. And nobody cared because they were like, well, they're gay and they deserve it and they're going to hell anyways. And it was just like, you let millions of people die just because it didn't directly affect straight cis people. And that's really fucked up. And it killed millions of people. Like, my mom was a dancer and she was like, I watched all of my gay friends, my gay male friends, drop like flies. All of a sudden it was like, you know, I would go into the theater, I would be ready to dance with my partner, they're sick. And they're probably not coming back. And it was just like, you know, that gives me like absolute chills.
Oh, because I just got chills just thinking about that too.
I mean, and, you know, to reference Leilani, she told me a similar story where she was like, my parents can't talk about it. you know, like it really, like it's just like something that they can't handle. And my mom still, you know, tears up because she thinks about her best friends just literally dying and nobody's trying to stop it. Like she couldn't go to anyone and be like, help them. They would be like, no, they have AIDS, like they're gonna just die. And if she was like, why is this okay to people? Like, why is it okay that shows are allowed to just not include people for your convenience? Why is it okay that millions of people died for your convenience? Why is it that millions of people are still dying by police brutality for your convenience? Like, it's just amazing that it just keeps happening and people keep making excuses. And I'm just like, at some point, we're going to have to wake up, right? Like, this is happening and this is affecting children, innocent little beings who just come into this world like, hey, what's up? I'm just existing and I don't know why I'm here. And we're just like, well, good luck. Like, hope you don't get killed. Like, it's just like, great. You know, this is awful.
Yeah. And there's like, all of the noises. It's so real and you're so right. And there's also been, I don't want to say a lot of progress, but there's been some forward progress in like young kids not feeling like they're going to be ostracized by their whole families, because so many more families are more accepting now than they were even like 5 years ago. Like I remember in high school there were two gay boys at my high school who were only half out of the closet, basically.
Yeah, only with their friends, basically.
Yeah. And then post college, post high school, like a lot more people have come out and all of those things. But it's like, that was 8-9 years ago at this point when I like started.
Not that long ago.
Yeah. And it was like zip, and like theater kids, we didn't care. We were like, okay. But
I thought everyone was gay.
Me after I was like, college, isn't everyone gay? After college and come home to like a very like not supportive town. It's just like,
yeah,
why I worked at Starbucks and no one was gay. Like I think 1 or 2 people were gay and I was like, this is weird, that's suspicious. But it's like,
yeah, and it is, but because you know people were hiding it and some people still feel the need to hide it, but how do you change that? And I think that's sort of what your like whole podcast is about, is like, what do we need to get rid of and what do we need to bring to the table? Because if people see the representation, if they see BIPOC people on stage, if they see trans bodies on stage, if they see non-binary people on stage, then they're like, I'm not alone. And the fact of the matter is, you know, we went to an art school. Everybody was gay. Like, I kid you not. Like, and if they weren't gay in college, they're gay now. Like, it's just like, I kid you not. Like, everyone is somehow on that queer spectrum. I'm telling you, in different ways for sure, but everyone is on there. And like, you know, in high school and all that stuff, you felt so alone. And I think about, you know, all of the children at my high school and like what would happen if they did a show like Pose on stage. How many people would be like, oh my God, I'm not alone? And how many people would that change their life? And that's like what this is about, right? It's like these shows changed the world when they were supposed to. You know, Jerome Robbins changed the world when he was supposed to. Hamilton changed the world when it was supposed to. But now it's time to step aside and let other producers and other performers and just different personalities and opinions
and perspectives
do their job in changing the world.
Yeah.
And it just needs to be done because these people exist. They've always existed. You know, it's not anything new. Trans people are in the history of, you know, African communities. Trans people are something in Mexican communities, in my community. Like, they were something that was worshipped at one point. You know what I mean? So it's just like, these have always existed. They're not something new. I don't know why people are shocked by this, but like, step aside and let's make room for all of these like new things. What if the Stonewall riots were something that we openly talked about in history books? What if it was something that we had learned in, you know, I took dance history. I'm sure you took a theater history class of some sort. Like, what if that was something that we actually learned about? How much would that change what the theater world, what the dance world, what the arts world would look like today?
Right. Exactly. And do you know of any shows that are happening like right now that you just want to like shout to the wind, like this is an amazing show, everyone go see it immediately?
I mean, so a huge shout out to What the Funk Festival, which is created by Mix Puxaplenty. They are a queer, non-binary BIPOC performer in the Seattle Burlesque area. And the What the Funk Festival is the first and only, as of right now, all funk music, all BIPOC people festival in the entire Pacific Northwest. So it's something that I think will change the world. And I actually work for Pucks now. I'm part of the Puckduction team, which is their producing company. And it is just amazing I have never felt so safe in an environment because all of the people that I work with are queer and they're of color and they understand and they know what it's like to just be abused in a work environment. And they're like, we're just actively working to not do that. So I'm going to 100% shout out What the Funk Festival. It's supposed to happen in August of this year. If it doesn't happen live, because who knows what the world's going to look like, it's definitely going to happen online. And, you should follow Mix Puxaplenty on Instagram and get their updates on what they're doing. But yeah, I think their show is something that will truly change the world because it's its first. Hopefully that doesn't mean it's its last. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh, for sure not,
Yeah.
As you said, like we're artists, we're always making new stuff,
Yeah, and I hope like some other, queer, non-binary, BIPOC person is like, I could do that too. I love that. Like, I want to create something of my own and be like, yes, you can.
Of course you can. We're telling you, yes, go do it.
Go do it right now.
If you're listening, queer BIPOC person who wants to do a burlesque show festival,
please do it right now. I beg of you.
Awesome. What if do you have any personal shows, amazing pieces of art that are coming up or streaming that you want anyone to watch?
Yeah, so I'm a part of a few burlesque troupes in the area. The Dirty Darlings, which Sweet Leilani is also a part of, have just launched their Patreon, and we have a 10-minute virtual performance on there for any person who subscribes. We have many different tiers, so you can choose. If you're super broke, we understand. Like, get that lowest tier, do your thing. Like, any dollar counts. And then you can follow us on Instagram, The Devil's Advocates, which I'm also a member of. We do a monthly virtual show on Crowdcast, and we just sort of launched a new show, and it's called Yes, Another Digital Cabaret, because there's 10 million of them now. But that is every third Thursday of the month. I perform every month. It's, basically music videos with hot, sexy people who are like queer and different bodied, and it's just wonderful. So you should definitely tune into that. Tickets are as cheap as $2. You can follow them at Devil's Advocates Burlesque on Instagram. And then Simone Pin is currently on a break, but I would definitely follow them. Simone Pin is women of color owned and operated. So nice. Anya and Simone Arche are amazing, and they are truly changing the dance world. With what their shows are doing, and truly changing the burlesque world by just like the representation they bring to the stage. So follow them and keep updated, because I'm sure something good's gonna happen. And then me, you can follow me at Micaela Guns with 2 Z's on Instagram, or you can follow my burlesque account, which is at Scarlett Folds. And I will post updates on any show that I'm on either one of those accounts, so you can just stay up to date.
Yeah, all of those things will be linked down below, so you can get those quick little links to whichever one you want to watch, listen to, support, all of the things. And my very last sneaky question for you, which is not so sneaky anymore unless you listen to every episode of the podcast. Who would you like to see on this podcast?
Oh, that's so good. There's just so many people, right?
Right.
I mean, if you're curious about more of a like burlesque BIPOC opinion, I would definitely reach out to Pucks and see if they're interested in doing it. They also have their own podcast, so you could probably give each other a little shout out on there. Or I would also ask Teresa Alexander, who lives in New York currently and is dealing with all of, you know, that audition process, show process in a pandemic in New York, which is one of the most crowded cities like ever. So I would definitely reach out to either one of those people and see sort of what their opinions are on all of this stuff.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah.
I had an amazing time. It was so good to see you and talk to you. Like, it's so
I know. It's been so long. Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you so much for, you know, having me on here. It's truly an honor.
Absolutely. I'm just, you know, having a good time over here. Well, thank you guys all so much for listening. This has been really a wonderful episode, I think. So let me know what you think down below. Give this a like, rate it. I don't know. Do all the things. Thank you so much for listening to the Next Canon podcast. Goodbye.
Bye.